Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, everyone, welcome. I will call this meeting to order and begin by acknowledging with gratitude that we live and work on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish, whose people have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding Nicollet-le-Bois,
Bowen Island. Welcome to the Bowen Island Municipality Committee, the whole meeting of Monday, June 16th, 2025. And thank you for joining. I'm Andrew Leonard, the Mayor of Bowen Island Municipality and the chair of this meeting. I'd like to begin, as I always do, by introducing the other elected members of our council here today. Beginning with on my right, her notes of Councillor and Islands Trustee Judy Getty. On my far left, we have Councillor John Saunders. To his right is Councillor Tim White, and to his right is Councillor Alison Morse. Setting their regrets today are Councillor Island Trustee Sue Ellen Fast, as well as Councillor Jurgensen. I believe is in the air right now. We're also joined by members of our professional staff team, including our Chief Administrative Officer, Kieran Dillon, our Corporate Officer, Sophie Singha, as well as other members of our staff who will be presenting, reports here this afternoon. This meeting is being recorded, and when members of the public speak during the public comment and question and answer portions of the meeting, your presence and voice will be included in the permanent recording, which will be available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca and is streaming to the masses on our YouTube channel right now. This council meeting is an official forum for the conducting of the business of local government. We all love our home. We're passionate about what happens in our community. I would encourage everyone to maintain a constructive and respectful tone during the meeting and to direct questions during the public comments or question and answer portion of the meeting to myself. For those following along, either in the gallery or online, the full council package for this afternoon's meetings are available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca, including all of the attached staff books. And with that, I will look for to our corporate officer for the introductory and late items today.
There are no late items. Please note that the presentation that was published in the agenda package was revised slightly and that will be updated.
Okay. And in fact, I have a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Morse. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that carries unanimously. Moving along today to our main event, our delegation at 3.1, we have the Hearth joining us here today, including James Nesbitt, the chair, Sharon Thera, board director, and Jamie Sheffer, executive director. And welcome. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for coming in person, and I will turn it over to you folks for your presentation. Great.
PowerPoint to get started. Thank you. Hello, hi. My name is Jamie Nesbitt, and just going to give you some brief. We actually have our presentation up, please. That. Sophie, did we tell you to move to the next slide? Is that how the process goes?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, there we go.
Great. You can move to the next slide, please. Oh, great. You can move to the next slide, please. Great. So brief introductions. My name is Jamie Nesbitt, and I am an award-winning producer, designer, and arts leader with a career spanning over 2 decades in North America and across Europe. I've led large teams of artists and the creation of ambitious theatrical works and have produced and designed for major festivals, opera houses, and theater international.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sharon Thera. I am an Indigenous person. I can't speak today or something. And my full Salish name is Singsi Wellgood. It means the woman who walks with many. I lived on Bowen for about 20 years, and I come to the committee with a master's degree in fine arts. And in addition, I have held a number of different roles. I currently am the executive director of engagement and education at BC's Office of the Human Rights Commissioner. And I spent a lot of my career doing work in mental health and in arts education pieces of work located around residential schools. I was involved in developing the mandate for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I led the Indian Residential School Survivor Society for about 15 years, and I've done some deep Indigenous health research work at UBC and McGill. I lived in New Brunswick for several years, and I've been on Bowen for, as I mentioned, 20 years, and I believe that the arts are a place that our community can come together to not only enrich what we do here, but also to begin to speak to each other across the bridge of polarization that we're experiencing in our world today. I can speak a lot, so I'm going to be limited.
Hi, thank you for having us. My name is Jamie Schefter. I am the Executive Director for the Hearth Arts on Bowen. I have a career, over 20-year career as an administrator for arts organizations, 5 years here on Bowen, and previously 15 years at for the Arts Council in Invermere. I love the arts, obviously. I've been at it for a long time. I support the arts, and I uplift the arts in any way that I possibly can. Arts being the wide umbrella of arts, not the traditional visual arts, but performing, literary, across the board.
To the next slide, please. Okay, so we have some few meeting goals that we wanted to name here today. Starting with just, we're just mention this gratitude that we have for having this moment here. Every time we've had the opportunity to meet with the municipality, it's been incredibly valuable for both our board and our staff. Having this extended and focused time with you today truly feels like a gift. So on behalf of all of us, I'd like to sincerely thank everyone for being in this meeting today. It's invaluable for us. Thank you so much. Let's start with the relationship goal. We see this as an opportunity to build an even stronger, more collaborative connection with you folks. We've committed to fostering a positive and productive partnership and view this as a first step towards that goal. An arts leadership goal that we have, while the cultural master plan is a visioning document rather than an operational one, we find it as an invaluable resource for us, both for our organization and for the broader community. Although it's not scheduled for an update until 2027, we have already begun a thorough review of this. We see this upcoming 2027 milestone as a meaningful opportunity to collaborate more closely with you folks through a renewed relationship and more structured in-person engagement. We believe we can work together to refine the plan, sharpening its focus to better serve the artistic and cultural needs of both members. A Hearth value goal that we have is, upon reading some of our vision statements at the Hearth, one line stood out to me personally. We are a nonprofit community organization supporting art in all its forms on Bowen. Speaking from my own lived experience at the Hearth, I've been seeing firsthand the breadth of artistic expression we support through performances, workshops, literary events, and more. We're committed to ensuring our actions reflect our full mandate and uplift and support all forms of art across the island. I also want to mention just one brief thing. If you have questions during our presentations, feel free to ask them. I hope that during the presentation, they can become more like kind of clarifying questions about things that we're saying specifically in the moment. If you have broader questions, we've left quite a lot of time at the end of our presentation to discuss those things. So please just make a note of it. But if there are questions that come up during the presentation, feel free to ask them now. That's totally fine. Great.
The agenda. So we'll be giving a short overview of Hearth Arts on Bowen and a program overview, funding overview and future goals, discussions and questions, and the next steps and action items. Who we are. We're a great, grand, hardworking organization that believes in the arts. We're a nonprofit, as Jamie said. We support arts in its many forms. Like I said earlier, visual being the more traditional way, performing, literary, forming, meaning music, dance, theater, across, it's a very, very broad thing, form, yes. We do manage or operate 3 venues now. We have the Hearth Gallery. We also now work with municipality on the Bowen Theatre. And we have the stage, which is the Spakwas gathering stage down at the gallery where we can support performing arts. We are guided by the cultural master plan. And we are led by a working board of volunteers.
And I want to accentuate the led by, the amount of working volunteer hours at our organization is staggering. We are, it's immeasurable really how many volunteer hours I have in this organization right now. It's pretty remarkable.
So with that, we'd like to talk a little bit about our board, just so that you get a sense of who is sitting at the helm of the organization and exactly what folks are bringing to us. We recently had a new board picture taken. I love this photo. I happily was absent for it, so I didn't get to have my debut. But as you can see, we have James, who is newly joined our board as the chair, and James brings with him this sort of really exciting vision. And he has lots of ideas, and he's sort of reinvigorated the board process. And we're very excited to be able to work alongside Jamie. Jamie's joined by Paul Valley, who is our vice chair. Vice chair, and his role includes governance and HR. And he's such a deep thinker. He will sit in our sessions and sometimes sideways bring in some ideas that might not have occurred to us in ways that help us think about how we might function differently. Dave Pollard is our treasurer. He's been with us since 1914. 2014. He's been with us for 11 years, and you probably all know Dave. He's an ex CPA, and Dave is the person who was involved in writing the cultural master plan, along with Jackie Massey, who many of you might know as well. Dave, of course, is our treasurer. Sherry Ulrich, some of you might know as well. Sherry's a musician. She's been on the board with us for about 2 years. She plays the role of secretary, and it's always a delight to have her saying, okay, slow down. I didn't get that in the notes. In addition, we've got Cindy Fairbank, who's a pianist and an arts educator, and Cam Stevens, who is a artist and a musician and woodworker. Gail Lotenberg, who many of you know through her work with the community theater. I just want to give a shout out to Gail for the incredible amount of work that she's put into the Performing Arts Committee and getting the community theater off the ground. We also have Sarah Isley, who brings a background in organizational development and strategic planning. We have Simon Hadfield, who is leading our fundraising committee. Simon is an earth scientist that has been involved in the energy sector in major senior roles for a long time. And also brings a really strong sense of how to engage a community of donors. So we're excited to have Simon on board. And Belly, who's with us in the room. Sorry. And I got your last name wrong, I'm really sorry. Anne Murphy, who is a history prof at UBC, who's been involved in the intersection of research and multimedia projects, as well as Lois Bella, who's with us in the room. Lois has a history in journalism and education as well. And all of these people, what unites us all is that they bring this deep love and understanding of the importance of arts and the arts and the role that it plays within the community on Bowen. And so we're very fortunate to be able to have this board, which most of whom have been with us for less than 4 years. Many have been with us for 2 years. And so a part of what we're doing as a board now is we're on a learning journey as well. We're learning about the history of the arts on Bowen. And we're trying to understand what the trajectory should be over the next few years. Thank you. We've got the QR code in the presentation so that you can take a look at the biographies of all of the board members in greater detail when you have a moment.
So some of our key stakeholders for the year of 2024. We keep track of all the visitors that come through the Hearth Gallery. We have over 18,000 people that visited the gallery in 2024. We have 54 volunteers that equal about almost 5,000 hours of volunteer time that these volunteers donate. About 25 of those volunteers are hosts in the gallery, and they put in a shift every week. And they are our front end, or they're the face of the gallery when people come to visit. On average, a volunteer puts in about 87 hours per year. It's a lot, and that's on average. That doesn't equate to some of the volunteers that put in measurable hours. We host about 200 artists in the gallery and the art shop. Last year, we paid out $85,000 in commission to artists. This is absolutely amazing that we pay out that amount of money to artists that are creating artwork, and we host a space for them to sell their work. That's a massive amount of money. We pay that out basically in paychecks. It's my happiest day when I get to write a paycheck and hand it to an artist for that full circle experience.
This is also a piece that's mentioned in the Cultural Master Plan, which is to help artists make a living on Bowen Island. That's one of the priorities that was named in the master plan. So we're happy to be able to fulfill that, and we'll speak about it in a more fulsome way later on. Yes, thank you, Sharon. Last year, we paid out about $3,500 to musicians who have performed at the gallery or on the stage. Revenue from 2024. As I said, we pay out a percentage of art sales to gift shop and gallery artists. The 60% is not correct. It's 65% that we pay to artists. We retain 35%, and that helps cover the costs of running a gallery. I'm assuming I know some of you that have attended the gala each year, our fundraising gala. This past year, we raised about $18,000 at that event. We host about 80 artists that donate their art towards this gala. It's one way that the artists can give back to what they believe in, what we do at the gallery. It's a great event, and it's an annual event, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. As a matter of fact, we have more and more artists that apply every year. Jamie, I think you mentioned that it was 80 artists this year, but when you started it, there were 40 artists. About 40, so it's more or less double in the last 5 years.
And our fundraising amount has doubled because of that. Yes. For membership sales, we bring in about $4,500. That equates to 120 members that purchase memberships here on Bowen. I hope all of you have your annual memberships up to date. I have the list right here if you want me to check after we're done. In 2024, we received about $129,000 grants.
I just want to point out that our membership, we feel like that's an area for growth potential for our organization. We've formed a new committee, which has been dedicated to, in part, to membership drive, and we'll get into that later in the presentation. Great, thank you.
Next slide.
Next slide.
Should be the whale.
It's not amazing.
Not too long.
Oh. about that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see.
Maybe it's an opportunity for any questions at this point. If you want, need some time, Sophie, to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. We open it up while we're waiting. Yeah.
On the gift shop revenue, what's the total amount of it? What's the gross revenue for the gift shop for a year?
We have a slide later on that will show you the total amount, but basically that's 65% of the total.
130 odd thousand.
So pardon me?
130,769.23.
Thank you. Exactly.
85,065% of that.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, about 185,000.
131.
130. Thank you.
I didn't do the musicians.
And my understanding is that's a pretty fair commission rate that we're offering artists.
Very fair.
Yeah.
It's matter of fact, it's a bit, the artists get more commission on both than other non-traditional.
Yeah.
It's above industry standards for as I understand.
Yeah.
It's very generous on that.
Are all the artists members of, how many of the membership, of your membership is artists?
No, about 90 of them are artists and they all have to have a membership.
So you have to have a membership in order to show at the gallery.
Yes,
So of your 120 members, that means you've only got 30 that are non-artists?
I'd have to look at my membership.
They could be artists or non-artists, which I'm not sure what those 30 people are. And I think we really view this as like an area of potential growth for the organization, and which is one of the main reasons why we've established the financial committee of membership drive. So we've got a tiered system that we're developing currently with potential you get offered different things if you become a certain tier of member for the heart. So yeah, we kind of view that as low too, I think, if that's what you're insinuating, and we view that as a potential area for growth for organization. Specifically, there's so many financial challenges facing arts organizations across the board right now. And so we're looking anywhere and everywhere for ways to generate revenue, and we view that as a definite way to do it, along with all the other benefits to the organization that come with membership.
Last year when we we had to cut back on staffing, one of the roles was the membership coordinator. We cut back, so that role has fallen on my desk. So that definitely, it took a hit for sure, membership campaign.
And one thing we're doing is we're kind of dovetailing with this new expansion into the theater and having people come into the theater where we have a membership drive presence at our events now. Trying to get people to come in and sign up to be members. So we're trying to use the opportunity that we have by having all these people come in to see our Art Present series and use the opportunity to gather more members for our organization. You're back online, Sophie?
Yes.
Great.
Sorry about
No problem at all.
So we wanted to share a little bit about how we're thinking about the cultural master plan. We'll do a little bit of a background to it and then talk about some of the things that we've accomplished in the fulfillment of the cultural master plan. So as you know, the cultural master plan was developed in the years from 2015 to 2017 roughly, and it involved a massive community engagement process where we conducted a survey, or the committee at the time conducted a survey. About 300 Bowen citizens responded to that survey, including artists and people who lived in the community, as well as over 100 individual interviews were conducted with businesses, with artists, with people who participate in the arts on the island. And from that process, as I mentioned, Jacqueline Massey and Dave Pollard created the Cultural Master Plan. The Cultural Master Plan,
Award-winning.
the award-winning Cultural Master Plan.
Sure.
Now, I haven't done the research to find out what the award was, so I have to suss that out. And The cultural master plan has guided a lot of the work that we do. In fact, when you sign on as a board member, you sign on to support the cultural master plan. So it was one of the first very long pieces of reading that I did in joining the board. To the next slide, thanks. And what we've been doing over the last year or so is taking a deeper look at the cultural master plan so that we are able to speak to it in a way that's relevant and that addresses what Boweners told us they wanted to see happen on the island. James mentioned that we see the cultural master plan as a visionary document. It actually outlines a vision of the arts. It's not a strategic document. You'll see that some of the things that it suggests should happen are really out of the scope of a small organization like the Hearth. And we wanted to walk you through a little bit of what the original intention was with the cultural master plan, but also to give you a sense of what is possible through the master plan. And as it comes to its end in 2027, how we're thinking about reviewing it and re-engaging it in a way that's actually operationally possible.
Yeah, we really hope to have you folks involved in that process. I hope it's something that's important to us.
And so you'll see that from the cultural master plan originally back in 2017, they had identified 16 priorities, and I'll spare you the boredom of my reading through them. I'll leave it for you to take a look at. And attached to each of those priorities were a set of initiatives as well that were specific things that people wanted to see happen on the island with regards to the arts. And so there were about 38 of those that were identified. In 2021, we did a review of the cultural master plan to take a look at what we had actually accomplished. And I'll walk you through some of the things that we've completed in terms of the master plan. But at the time that we did the review, we also noted that there was a missing initiative or priority, and that was around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so we added that as a 17th priority in the process. What I just wanted to no, you go ahead.
Well, that's just been really, we've implemented that into our organization in quite a meaningful way. So I mean, we can speak at length to that, but I just wanted to say that new initiative was actually embodied into our vision and our operations in quite a meaningful way at it.
Yeah, exactly. We see it as sort of foundational principle, and so it informs all of the work that we do in the organization. Thank you. Here are some of the pieces that were identified originally when the master plan was built as pieces that might be out of scope of the 38 initiatives. And we just wanted to share those with you so that you had a sense of, at the time that they developed the plan, they thought that these things might not fit with an organization such as ours in terms of what we were able to do. We have done a few of those things, and we'll talk a little bit about them, and happy to take your questions about them as well. But as we move forward into the next decade, we need to think about what's realistic as a small organization like the Hearth. And just looking at the numbers in terms of the pieces that, the number of recommendations that were developed, we sort of have been, as I mentioned, we've been doing a sort of a strategic analysis of the cultural master plan. And we've developed we've grouped them into sort of these 5 categories. We have seen that people wanted to talk about the development of art spaces, arts programming, community engagement, operations, and arts advocacy pieces. That's those 38 initiatives. They fit into those 5 categories. And as we move forward in our strategic planning in our organization, we will be choosing from those 5 categories how we do our work on an annual basis. I'll give you an example of each of them. The art spaces included a community theater. Arts programming included all kinds of things like an artist school, developing opportunities for the development of an art school on the island, different, the gallery actually was one of the spaces that was spoken about in the cultural master plan. Community engagement, which is a place that we see a big opportunity for our organization, and of course, that's a little bit of the work that I do, is a piece that we think we need to be spending a little bit more time in. And so what we want to do is, of course, expand our membership, but we also want to bring Boweners into the fold of the arts, not just as viewers, but as active participants. And we hope that you will set an example as a council. And we have some ideas. Don't worry, you won't be doing a flash mob, but we do want you involved in thinking about how you might be involved in setting an example for community collaboration and participation in the arts. The arts advisory role, advocacy role is also one where we see that we can play a significant part. Particularly in projects where we cannot deliver the actual art product, where we might be able to amplify a particular artist or art collective's work. And so we'll speak a little bit about that as we come up.
Yeah, we have like, an internal structure that supports advocacy. So we feel like that is a place where we could potentially do more because of the structure that already is in place at the organization.
What we wanted to demonstrate is that we're actively thinking about the cultural master plan, what's in scope for us and what's out of scope for us, what we can do with our limited resources and what may be challenging and problematic. And we're hoping that that will help you also to think about what your priorities might be in terms of the council. And to the next slide, so thanks. So again, here's a list of some of the things that we have completed in our time since the implementation of the cultural master plan. We've done quite a lot of things, as you can see, and I want to pause for a moment here just in case you have any questions about any of these processes. I don't need to go through each of them, you probably all know them. But for instance, the heritage celebration piece that we did, we had Lebanon designated. Is that how you say it? Is it Lebanon?
Yeah.
We had Lebanon designated as a cultural historic site. And so that was one of the pieces that was in the cultural master plan. It was a really early success in this process. We of course have built a gallery and a new built a community theater. And so we have instituted quite a number of pieces within the cultural master plan. Are there any questions? We'd really like to hear from you in the event that you have questions.
Councilor.
On the slide, cultural master plan by the numbers, which I think is just a couple of slides ago.
Yes.
The first column is number. Is that the number of them, or are they all like?
Those are the numbers, that's a number, the total number of initiatives
Okay.
under each of
Each category.
those categories. We've got a full listing for you, and I can add that, I can send that in to you later. I wasn't sure that you wanted additional paperwork.
Are there 27 recommendations in total?
There are 38 initiatives, 27 of which were deemed possible at the time of the implementation of the process.
You know if council ever adopted the 2017 to 2027 master plan by formal resolution? Did council adopt by formal resolution the 2017 to 2027 master plan?
It's a bylaw, yeah.
It's a bylaw.
I've got a copy of a bylaw that was passed in 2004. I don't have a copy of any more recent bylaw.
I do.
It was, it's on the
Okay.
website, actually.
Well, I know it's on the website, but it was just whether we had skipped a step.
Okay.
No, there is a bylaw, there was originally bylaw number 297 in 2011, and the bylaw number 446.
I got bylaw 129 back in 2004, so I guess I missed bylaw. Sorry about that.
Oh,
Okay.
move forward. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Councilor. Yeah.
When you say that Lebanon's been designated, I know that it became part of the municipal registry, but was it designated federally or provincially as well?
Not federally or provincially, it was the municipal one. Over to Jenny, we wanted us to share some of our really exciting successes.
Some of our successes, some of our events that that fit under the cultural master plan. Some of the things that we've done. So there's a list here. I'm going to get into each one of these 5 events further into the slides going forward. But you can see that the cultural master plan priority number it associates with the event that we've created or events plural. Go ahead, Sophie. So the first one is the Authentically Indigenous Festival that we supported last year. It was a 3-week festival. We had over 400 people attend all the different events that were associated with this festival. There was an art show, an authentic Indigenous art show. There was also a student art show. These are kids from Bowen Island that created art, and we displayed the art and sold some of the pieces in the art gallery. We had a feast at the gallery that was unbelievable and well attended and delicious. I don't know, did any of you attend that? That was quite. I know I was there. And I ate a lot.
You ate a lot.
Yeah, and it was really.
You ate before the council.
I
Yeah.
ate there, yes, yes. We did also have a celebration on the stage on the 21st of June for National Indigenous Peoples' Day. A lot of children were there. It was a great event. It was a storytelling event. And yeah, and then just other sort of offshoot events that were very, very successful. This was our first Authentically Indigenous Festival. And we will be making it an annual event, although probably more like every other year because it is a massive undertaking. But we will continue with this festival. Oh, by the way, we did bring in an Indigenous curator that we paid industry standard fee to, and he was a big part of the festival. That was due to some really great funding that we received for this event.
We see this event as potential for inviting the community to participate in broader ways. So thinking of enacting active pieces of work. So for instance, drumming circles or making your own drum in ways that help to teach about Indigenous culture as well. And I'm really excited to be part of that process and ways that we can innovate this process.
And this coming Friday, we have a new show that's coming here as part of Art Presents called Theater of Fire, which we're really, really excited about as well. So that's another part of our Indigenous programming that's coming online.
Isn't it on Saturday?
June 21st,
Saturday.
Saturdays. Apologies, don't go on Friday, go on Saturday.
Or line up on Friday.
Or line up on Friday, yeah.
Because it will be sold out.
Yeah.
So line up on Friday.
Yeah.
Another event that we initiated in 2021 was the Art from the Kids on the Rock. This was a show that I worked together with Sarah Haxby, and we hosted children from Bowen Island in the gallery with art. So many of these children had never had a proper art gallery show. It was thrilling for them to see what they created on the walls of an art gallery. They could show it off to their family and friends. Since spring 2021, we've had another Kids on Rock art show. Plus, we have partnered with the PAC, the Parents Advisory Committee, to have a couple of shows as well in the gallery. So it's one initiative that I support very much is children's art and giving them the opportunity to be part of a proper gallery. People come in and view their art and maybe even have an opportunity to purchase their art.
Again, another initiative from the Cultural Master Plan that we have been able to enact.
One of our so the Bowen Theater is open we have offered a series of 4 shows as well as the opening event with BTU. One of the shows that we have hosted is Paper Mountains. So Anya Stockstead is a local young woman who is now choreographing her own show, and we brought this show to the theater with amazing, huge success, and to the delight of many local people. Some of them new converts to live contemporary music and dance. It was a sold-out show, and probably about a third of the people that attended were young dance students from Bowen Island. I was here. It was really thrilling to watch these students see an actual show and then come out afterwards into the lobby and meet the dancers. It was a beautiful event. It was a 70-minute event, and there was not a sound in the theater. It was completely quiet, and everyone was mesmerized. I see Anne smiling because she was here with her son. It was a beautiful event.
Anecdotally, I think what's been really a key part to this big result of the success of having 3 sold-out shows so far is people coming up to me and saying, I didn't know this was going to be possible in this space. You know, and I think having, you know, professional, high-quality shows come into the space and with, you know, full sold-out shows, and to have those shows show the Bowen Islanders what's possible has been one of the key successes amongst many of already what's happened with Harp Presents. And this show was a shining example of that. In many, it was happened, sorry, it fell on, it was really exciting. So it happened on Mother's Day weekend, and I think a lot of mothers and daughters came to that event, and that group particularly saw much possibility. I think we'll start to receive the results of people coming to see these shows coming down the line as they see, okay, maybe I could do that, you know? So I'm really excited about that potential.
Another area is service to our arts community. So as a nonprofit arts organization, it is our role to offer shows or events or programming that does not equate to revenue for the heart. So it's our offer to support the community arts. It is, you know, some of the initiatives are initiatives that we host. Some other initiatives are with partners on Bowen. And
Some of them amplify and support the work of other folks that we can't take on directly. The kinds of pieces of work that we can't deliver ourselves.
And some great things that have happened with some of those relationships and our direct programming, some of the arts, is they formed relationships. So for example, the Bowen Island Pride and Parade event, we formed a relationship with those folks. And now we're in discussions to have a queer show in the space potentially next June. So those kinds of relationships, even though they might not be like direct programming that we're doing, are creating new inspiration for ideas and things and programming that we can see down the line with our organization.
Well, and that's the community engagement work that we want to have in terms of creating a value add around the arts advisory role that we want to hold.
Totally.
it is one of my jobs is to support artists. I often have artists come and meet me in the office, and I provide them with information or guidance or tools to grow as an artist, to go forward as an artist. The Bowen Pride event is one of those where we sat in my office and I said, what can we do? What can we make this bigger? How can we make it a bigger event that maybe includes art or performance or what? And so we've already had a couple of meetings and we're well on our way to look for funding to pay for a curator to be part of a show in the gallery for next year. This is a very small list, so you know.
Yes.
It's a larger list. One of the events that we supported in 2024 was the Cultural Campus Art School at the gallery. We are sometimes closed in January, at least the gallery is closed in January. So we thought this was a good time to offer a very robust art programming opportunity, especially in January when the weather's not great and people are looking for things to do. It was a great success. We did really well. We have a lot of people come through the gallery to attend these types of juggling to art classes and everything in between. It was a good event. We would like to do it again, but I don't know that we can do it annually as it is a big time constraint on our staff and volunteers to offer this, but it was a really great program. It is also part of a core funding agreement that we offer art programming in the community and work more closely with community rec.
We can move past this slide.
Sorry, yeah, for ourselves.
No, do not need the slide.
And so these are some posters to help lead you into the very exciting and colorful budget discussion that we want to have with you. So we can move on. Just a quick note about the types of funding and the sources of our funding, and then how we use the funding. And we have a couple of graphs to help walk you through these. You'll see that the way that we use the funding, the majority of it goes to artists and some to administration. This is one of the very important and exciting pieces of this presentation, if not the most exciting piece of this presentation. And that is the amount of money that we've been able to contribute through our processes to artists in Mont Volin. And you can see the way that this has increased over time. In 2022, you'll see a very large sum, and that happened as a result of the folks coming out of the post-COVID period when they were holding on to their cash. They came out of it, and then people started to buy art. And so it's reflected there in that sum of $95,000.
Anecdotally, other organizations that we've spoken to also saw this increase at this time.
Nonetheless, that is a pretty impressive figure.
Also, sorry to interrupt, I just want to say that it also reflects Jamie's work at the gallery. And seeing the introduction of Jamie coincides with an increase in commissions for artists on the island. I think that just highlights the success that she's had in the gallery.
And in fact, we see that across the board, even when we move to the next slide. The grants that we received over the last 5 years, you can see that during the COVID period, we received some extra grants that were available during that time. And then they're moving back down again. We're seeing a decrease happening, a decline as granting is drawing up a little bit.
And you know, again, anecdotally, a lot of organizations are facing this right now. There's an exponential increase in competitions for grants with money staying generally the same. So this highlights a challenge for us as an organization.
Does that grant total include the municipal grant?
Yes. On to the next slide. And this is an indulgence of mine. I like nice graphs and people think they're confusing. So I will walk you through this for this slide. The background color, the blue mountains, that is the revenues. Those are the revenues that we receive, and per year the figures are highlighted in the blue ovals. And then the stacked graph are our costs. They are broken down into two segments. The red portion is the program costs, our expenses for program, and our administrative costs are in the purple. You'll see that our administrative costs have stayed relatively stable over the last 6 years, whereas our program costs have gone up quite significantly, which represents the degree that, to which we have increased and improved on our programming. We are doing more than we used to. And we're doing it with the same amount of money that we've had over the last little while in our administrative portfolio. On the next slide, you'll get a chance to see in a little bit more detail what those pieces of spending and revenue includes. So our revenue includes BIM core funding as well as grants and sales that we have talked about in terms of the gift shop. Our program costs are largely artist commissions, as well as the short-term contractors that we hire from time to time, such as curators, as well as production costs and program costs. And then the purple, the ones that stay stable, those are our office costs and our administrator salaries. And, you know, our photocopier, that kind of thing.
Great, so just delving into the core funding agreement. Just gonna, we have four main areas in section 3 that I wanted to briefly discuss. First is the cultural master plan implementation. So as we've already stated and demonstrated, the Hearth uses the cultural master plan as a master plan, as a foundation in everything that we do. Looking ahead, we are eager to deepen our collaboration with the municipality. We'll explore this more in detail later in the morning through our question and answer period. Public cultural spaces. As many of you have just witnessed, just across the hall here, the Hearth Board has dedicated countless hours and expertise leading up to the successful opening of the Ballin Island Theatre. The commitment has continued with 3 sold-out shows through our Hearth Presents series, showcasing a diverse range of arts programming for the Ballin Island community. It's been a pretty exciting time. The recreational cultural services operator, exciting to join here. Although not directly affiliated with Bowen Rec, as mentioned, the Hearth launched our Cultural Campuses Art School, providing direct cultural services to Bowen Island. This included workshops in juggling, acrobatics, swing, journaling, and more. That said, we view the onboarding of the theater as a new and exciting opportunity to deepen our collaboration with Bowen Recreation. It's something that's important to me, and we are aiming to deepen that relationship, as I just mentioned. The arts advisory role. We see our role as arts advisors to the municipality as an exciting area for growth as well, like we've been mentioning. The process leading up to the theater's opening has served as an important bridge building moment. Our hope is that the discussion portion of this meeting will mark the beginning of a new chapter in this aspect of our relationship with folks. I'll briefly mention some of these things in the slide. Annual financial reports are presented every year, as folks know. At the beginning of the year, financial statements are prepared by our treasurer, who is a certified accountant. Allison pointed out that we need to be more specific about what that means. We will aim to do that, Allison. PowerPoint presentation summarizing the activities and projects in which the Hearth invested funding provided. It included metrics, as in the 2024 information provided above, which are beyond state requirements in the section that we're talking about right now. I also want to mention that BIM is credited as a core funding source in the Hearth's annual report, in BIAC's annual general meeting, and in the Hearth's website as well, on all programming materials.
We just wanted to touch on these to let you know that in this particular section, we're meeting the requirements as outlined for our funding agreement.
Thank you. So this section, so the opportunities there, these are kind of questions I think that we could talk about in our question and answer period, but you know, how can we report in ways that are meaningful to you? How can we deepen this relationship that is satisfying for both of us and moves us forward? Go ahead.
We want to ensure that that we're working with you and that you as council can answer community questions about what we do as an organization. So we want to make sure that you're fully informed about who and what we are and what our strategic directions are and how much we think about and value the arts in this community.
I also think it's going to give us opportunity. Often, you know, I'll be talking to people in the community, sometimes council people, and they have ideas, which are great ideas. And I think there's potential to have like a more formal framework for idea generation, so that we can actually like have a working relationship as for ideas that are generated not only by us but potentially by you as well. I really wanted to delve in more deeply though, in like a, just to contrast our organization with other organizations within British Columbia. As part of our recent research into comparable arts organizations, we looked at a range of models to better understand how municipal support and community impact align elsewhere. One organization that stood out was Arts Whistler. According to their most recent annual report, Arts Whistler reduced staffing costs by 7.5% in 2023, primarily through attrition. At the same time, they increased wages to help their staff keep pace with inflation and rise the cost of living, which we all know we're facing majorly right now. And those are challenges that the Hearth also faces. Arts Whistler receives approximately $500,000 per year from the resort municipality of Whistler, which is a big up about 40% of their total revenue. By contrast, the Hearth operates as much leaner $300,000 annual budget, much smaller community, with only 20% of that coming from our municipality here. In other words, we're leveraging our municipal fundings at twice the rate, which I think shows a real success in how we're using money that's been given to our organization to support arts on Long Island. To put that in context, Whistler's population is about 3 times that of Bowen Island, yet its municipal arts funding is 8 times higher. That contrast underscores both efficiencies and the opportunity for stronger local investment in the arts. Additional comparisons show that other municipalities rely more heavily on government grants than we currently do. For example, the Sunshine Arts Council receives 2/3 of its total funding from various government sources, while BIAC receives less than 50. The Comox Valley Arts Council at Courtney gets 40% of its revenue from municipal grants compared to BIAC's 20%. Even the Golden District Arts Council, serving a town similar to our size on Bowen, receives $120,000 annually from this government. These benchmarks suggest there's room for Bowen Island municipal support to grow in alignment with peer communities across British Columbia. It's also important to recognize the extraordinary community commitment behind a recent informal poll that I made from the Performing Arts Committee, because I was just aghast at how much hours they were doing, found that they contribute more than 250 to 300 volunteer hours per month. That's just one committee. We have many committees at the Hearth. It doesn't include the volunteers who serve on our board, support the gallery, and now help theater. Altogether, the annual value of volunteer time, which we mentioned before, is conservatively, I do stress that, $150,000. While the extraordinary volunteer commitment behind the Hearth is a testament to our deep value, the deep value our community places on the arts, it also represents potential organizational vulnerability. This level of reliance, while inspiring, is not indefinitely sustainable. Volunteer capacity can fluctuate due to burnout, personal circumstances, and competing commitments. It's something that I'm majorly concerned with right now as a chair, just knowing how hard people are working with their limited volunteer powers. Without a more stable foundation of paid staff and consistent operational funding, we risk overextending our community's goodwill, undermining the long-term resilience of our organization. To conclude, this remarkable effort is truly a labor of love of Bowen Island artists and residents, people who believe deeply in the value of arts and continue to show up and give their time and make everything that we do possible. And we are inviting you to be part of that journey. Your input matters to us, not just financially, but as engaged Bowen Island residents care deeply about the well-being of this community as we do. Moving forward. These are some future needs. I think we can skip this as well. Yeah. Okay, so let's close with some initiatives that we are currently thinking about and dreaming about and implementing. One is renewing our relationship with you here. As mentioned many times now, we are committed to strengthening our collaboration with the municipality. Our initial step is to establish quarterly in-person meetings, which we talk about. These gatherings will serve both to keep stakeholders informed of our activities and to foster meaningful ongoing dialogue and cooperation. Strategic review of the cultural master plan. As we've mentioned many times, although the cultural master plan is not scheduled for renewal until 2027, we have already begun a comprehensive review. We hope to collaborate with the municipality on this process, using the 2027 update as an opportunity to realign goals, priorities that best serve Bowen Island's evolving cultural landscape. And feel free to stop anytime if you have any questions. We have a rebranding initiative. It's not a total rebranding, but it's partial. We're exploring the idea of rebranding our organization from the Hearth to Arts on Bowen. Currently, we are just the Hearth. We are the Hearth Arts on Bowen, but potentially just shrinking that down to Arts on Bowen. The potential change reflects our desire to better represent the full breadth of our work beyond the gallery and align our public identity more closely with community-wide mandates. Anecdotally, just feel like the Hearth may be too closely aligned with the gallery, so we wanted to show the community that we represent that everyone is, not only gallery artists. So one big thing for me personally and for our organization is sustaining the community theater. We're focused on ensuring that the theater remains accessible and well used by Bowen Islanders. I think it would be a great travesty if we built this beautiful thing and people don't use it. Our goal is to avoid underuse and instead create a vibrant, inclusive space that reflects the needs and interests of our community. Great, and stewardship of our community piano. So this has been I've learned a lot about what happens this piano in the last few months. It's quite astounding. During COVID, we had an excess of funding that we were able to match with the grant, which allowed us to purchase the grand piano. So we needed to spend that money, and we levied that, parlayed that into a grant. Since then, the idea of the piano as a legacy gift to the community has taken shape. We're now actively exploring how to ensure the long-term sustainability and accessibility, making this beautiful instrument available to broad community use while securing the resources needed to maintain it properly.
The level of this piano means that a certain level of artist can now come to Bowen. I didn't know this, but there is a certain type of piano above which professional artists have a requirement in order to be able to play community theater. So by having this theater, it means that we can bring in those kinds of acts to the community.
Yeah, and when we had Don Pemberton come in and their band came up and they just, I saw the first moment they touched the keys in that space, and it was quite a beautiful moment. Like they are just, whoa, this is, not only was the space beautiful, but this piano was magic. So it's quite a resource for our community that the Hearth is in process of gifting to the community. It's a great thing. I want to just, so next one, artist and residence program at the Cape. So I just want to change that more to community partnerships. So we're currently in early stage discussions with other organizations on Bowen Island. As we face challenges with grants, as we face inflationary challenges, we feel like partnerships are like a really huge way for us to continue to grow and expand as an organization and maintain financial stability. So we began conversations with the Bowen Conservancy. They approached us about an idea, and we've been really engaged in conversations about something to happen there. While we understand the growth, that growth will depend on additional funding, we remain committed to evolving and adapting in order to meet the changing needs of Bowen Island's vibrant arts community. So we love these ideas. We want to engage. It's going to be challenging to fully achieve them unless there are grants or more monies that come in different ways, but we are still proceeding like these things are going to happen. Community engagement strategy. This is something really exciting that we're doing right now, which is we're prioritizing efforts to reconnect and remain relevant with Bowen Islanders. A key part of the strategy involves compiling a comprehensive stakeholder list, already hundreds of names long, which we see as a foundation for growing a relationship with our community. So we have a humongous Excel spreadsheet that is listing every group, person that is connected to the arts on Bowen Island, and we use that as a great resource that we can now use when we want to expand and meet other people and artists on the island.
The point behind that is that we want you to understand that we're being strategic in the way that we're approaching artists on the island, but also communities on the island, so that we can be intentional and not be just off the side of our desk doing this.
Yeah, because we realize not everyone will come to the Hearth and talk to us. We need to actually go outreach and find out who these people are, because some people don't know who we are. Some people aren't comfortable potentially talking to people. So this is a way for us to really be proactive about our engagement in the community and find people who potentially can benefit from our mission. And the last point is public art committee integration. So we've had the discussion to consider possibly integrating the public art committee into our organizational structure. While we are excited about the potential, especially given how closely this aligns with our mission and vision, we want to be transparent about our current limitations. At this time, we do not have the capacity to take on the responsibility without a dedicated fee to support that administration. We look forward to discussing that with folks further and how it might be a sustainable operation moving forward for us. Great. Yes. So that's the end of our formal presentation. There's a lot of information there for you. I'm sure there's a lot of if you want us to think about some questions that you may have. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening.
It's been great. Thank you for the comprehensive presentation. I think that's a fantastic orientation both for council as well as the community. It's to sort of 360-degree vision of operations of the Hearth, and particularly as we move into this new phase within the municipality of having a community center complete, having dedicated art spaces complete, and then looking at what the evolving relationship between the Hearth and the municipality looks like. So I think this is a great starting point for that discussion. As we move forward, I noticed some hands up. So Councillor Morse, followed by Councillor Wake.
So a couple of questions. There were no financial statements included in package. So what is fiscal year?
We have provided financial statements. I think Kristen, you have a copy of it. We're just at the end of our fiscal year, at the end of this month.
So your June 30th fiscal year.
Yeah,
So
it depends, you know, we can't give you. You can look at last year's.
yeah,
Yes.
I don't have handy. And then I guess the other question in looking at Goldman's, what other government grants are? I mean, does the province provide grants? Is there federal grants? What other grants, government grant sources are there?
Well, there's municipal, provincial and federal.
So the feds have a program and it's a regular program, so you could get annual funding out of it? Or is the provincial funding getting money from the lottery fund or just what?
All of them.
Like the library has
Different.
an annual grant that they get from the province, I think, but.
I'll let Jason step in. Yeah.
Well, the BC Arts Council is probably one of our major funders, and also the Gaming Commission. Sometimes the Canada Council will have grants that fit our programming, but that doesn't happen very often. So I think mostly it's provincial funding that we receive. And like James said, you know, it's very competitive. We've applied for many grants in the last year and a half, 2 years that have been denied, which normally would have never been denied.
So there's no stable funding, like the library gets an annual fund, don't,
Core funding.
more funding from, I guess it's the province. But there's no such thing through the BC Arts Council, everybody doesn't just get something.
Yeah, generally it's project specific, so there may be grants that we haven't done yet because we don't have a project that specifically relates to a grant. But anytime a project comes to us, we are exploring ways, grants, whether it be provincial or federal, that may apply to the specific project so that we can apply for that.
And is the gaming commission operating funds or project?
It's operating, but somewhat project based. We usually have 5 pillars that we have to follow with that grant. Thank you.
Councillor Morse, over to you, Councillor Wake.
I was excited to see #1 initiative renewing our relationship with BIM and staff. And #4, sustaining the community theater. And you've spoken to it, but I guess when I consider your challenges in terms of funding and creating more revenue streams, certainly the theater should be real opportunity for that. But in order to maximize that, I think that relationship with them and sorting out, making sure it's a team effort. And I guess it's a question. I guess you're beginning this work, but how do you feel you're progressing on renewing that relationship in a way that's going to sustain the community theater?
With you folks. You know, like I've said many times today, it's a huge priority for me. And one idea that we have is to actually have more meetings such as this, maybe not this formal, but quarterly meetings potentially, if you folks have time for that, where we can like align our goals and values, so that we feel like we have a good partnership moving forward. You know, we are linked with the municipality in many ways, and that relationship needs to be really good in order for all the services to be to work effectively. So you know, I've never met you, and so I've never met John or Allison, but you know, so today, you know, for me marks the start of something. And we're hoping that we can organize more so that this isn't just a yearly thing that we do, and it's something that we can do, like I said, on a quarterly basis if you see that possible for you.
And is this something that might involve, say, your board meeting with the joint management committee?
We have, you know, because Gail is on the joint management committee, we have monthly reports coming in from Gail talking about, I mean, we can't talk about everything, there's always a list a mile long in our board meetings, but Gail's reporting is reporting directly to the board on a constant basis about what's happening at the GMC. So that's something that we know about quite well because of her incredible reporting and work that she's been doing GMC as well as Jamie.
Thank you.
I think that's a part of the reason we're here today, is we want to explore what avenues are available to us to increase our communication and also to hear from you about what your priorities are. And a part of that is that as a new board, as I mentioned, many of the members are with us, have been with us for less than 2 years. We need to understand where those opportunities are. So we'd like to hear from you as well, how we can improve that relationship. How do we start building it so that you're informed to the degree that you can actually speak comfortably about what it is that we do.
So one example that's come up for me is there's really no place to go to see the full spectrum of what's happening at the theater. And I mean, I understand you're working on that, but I think that's the sort of thing where we really want to present that this is a community effort, you know, the Hearth and council and staff and performers at the theater.
I'd say that we're very actively looking at that. The council generously has offered a part-time to finance or to fund a part-time position as the programming and production coordinator. And when that person comes on board, more things should happen because that person is paid and they will support the Performing Arts Committee. We also have a grant from the Community Foundation to update our website so that we can have a very specific web page specifically for the Bowen Theatre, where we will list all the events that are happening in the Bowen Theatre. But these things take time and they take resources. And I can guarantee that we're working very hard on that, towards that. So that, yes, we do showcase what's happening here. But, you know, by all means, please keep your ideas coming. We're here to make this, the theater, successful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One thing I want to mention is that we through our endowment, we have had a position to support the Hearts Presents series. But part of what's been happening with that position is starting to develop systems in place for when that position does officially come online, so that that person can hit the ground running with a group of systems that are geared towards making that theater a success. And part of that is what Jamie's been speaking of. So that is a huge part, I agree. Is that community knowledge. Often, I mean, anecdotally, there's people like, how do I find out about what's going on there? And so, if people don't have an easy way to access the information about what's happening in the theater, then that's a huge fail. So I agree with you completely on that point.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I know a lot more about the hearth than I did coming in, so that's a plus for me. You mentioned, and part of this last 5 minutes piece of discussion, but also in the presentation, about what can you do to help us help you, kind of thing, I guess be one way to put it. So you mentioned, the cultural master plan, and you're gonna follow that, and that's leading your way. But that's a high level document, as master plans typically are, and said, well, we want to align our goals and values, and okay, but that can be a bit nebulous as well. So what I'm wondering in terms of what can you report to us, and what can you bring to us?
Yeah.
Have you developed a series of like key performance indicators of some kind so that, and I'm thinking things like just off the top of my head, like, well, this year, if you were doing a year-end report, this year, our target was to get 75% instead of 65% of artist work, or our targets for fundraising were X. Here's what we got to. We tried for X, we got to Y. We increased our membership by 25% of non-artists or of artists, whatever. We managed to fill the theater, 150 days a year instead of 75, which was our initial target. Do you have those key performance indicators, and would you, at some point in a meeting, like provide that? And that gives us a whole lot more feedback on how effective you're being, frankly, about what you're trying to achieve.
Right.
I think this is a really important point that speaks to the fact that we've just started our engagement strategy. And we hope to identify the KPIs through that process. We have been collecting data. It just has not been in the form of impact measurement. And so in order for us to get to that space, we needed to understand, first of all, what the ground was. And I think we're there. That as a board, I think we're there. We're starting to know what our core business is. And then as we move beyond what the core business is, how can we implement strategic priorities? And in a lot of ways, that cultural master plan has been difficult because it's so aspirational that it's been difficult for any board to sit down and say, well, how do we make this happen? We've actually got to target specific elements of it in order for us to then choose our impact measurement KPIs. So it's the direction we're going in. It's definitely why we want an engagement plan in place, because then we can tell if is an increase in foot traffic even valuable? Is that valuable to us? Is that what we want? Or do we want more families on the west side of the island involved in this process? We've got to, in reviewing the cultural master plan, we've got to think about how we engage in those 5 priority areas, those areas that were identified in the cultural master plan, before we begin to think about long-term reporting. The other piece that is really prohibitive to the kinds of things that you're talking about is that we have one employee.
Yeah, no, I understand. It still makes it easy for us.
And it does make it easier for you, and it does for us as well. Coming on as a new board member, it's difficult for me to know what I can contribute meaningfully in this process, but then also come to a funder like you and say, this is what we've achieved, and therefore this is what we want to achieve, and this is how it will benefit you and it will benefit us. Now, as our municipal government, we see you as part of who we are. We all live and work here, well, maybe not everybody works here, but I get to work from home, thankfully. And so we're all working together in this process to make sure that we don't lose the value of what the art brings to us, And that's the reason that I got involved. My background, as I said, is in engagement. And so I see that as something that we need to enact now. Now that we've got our 5 years, Jamie's really built a solid organization for us. Now we can start looking at how we you were talking about the stepped, the levels of achievement, we reach a certain step. What's the next step? How do we do our strategic planning for next year? So that we then come out with KPIs that are meaningful and valuable for you and for us.
And just to talk about like where our time has been going, a lot of the time of the board and Jamie has been going to making this theater a reality and the
Yeah.
Heart Presents series a reality. So I'm excited for the position to come online for many reasons. One of them is to hopefully free up some time from the board so that we can actually take steps to actually reflect about where we're going and set goals for ourselves. We've just been so overrun with work, going, that we haven't really had time to kind of do that kind of reflection. Actually, having this presentation today has been really key in starting to that process. And I think when that position comes online, it's really gonna free up some time for the board to make those, set those goals for ourselves. The next goal that I have for myself personally is to have a job review, extensive job review of Jamie's job moving forward. And those indicators are gonna be part of that, review. So that is happening, and it's important to us and so then we will be able to take that information and then give that to folks. Thank you.
Councilor Saunders? Councilor Gooding?
Nice to meet you. I'm feeling like this is all very high level and, basic understanding and, like John said, in terms of, he knows a lot more now than when he first came in. And I suppose I've been closer to it for many years. And but I would Sharon, I think it's the two slides that weren't included in the presentation is the about the budget. And I think in terms of us being a major funder and coming up with even increased funding, that's really the baseline that we need to be able to sort through. So in terms of wanting to be boosters and supportive and helpful, and I think we really need to understand more about the grants and what the problems are with grants and the extent of what's available. So if you've got an Excel spreadsheet that's got stakeholders, either now or with the new position, are we going to have an Excel spreadsheet with all the potential grants and figuring out ways of getting more support and help in terms of increasing that number? It shouldn't be falling, right? We're a substantial force now in terms of actually been a tiny community that's built a big performance space and been quite successful in it. So, it took us longer, but we're under budget or we're on budget. So that's huge. And now it's a considerable space. So, being able to convince the feds that we're a reliable building group, and all the work that was done in terms of building up the support so that we got the federal funding, from building the annex to coming and building this place. It's like, we need to figure out ways of us possibly working with the MLA and the MP in terms of, we had a really good solid relationship and it has shown up in terms of considerable grants. How do we build on that? And what do we need to do to keep it growing? And also, I'd like more personally, I would like more detail in terms of those two slides with the color charts and everything in terms of bringing that down. And I find that I was involved with the board when we were drafting the telecom master plan, and I have difficulty with these slides in terms of, the 16 core and the 38 initiatives, and what is out of scope and what exactly does this mean, and it's I would find it really helpful in terms of understanding and I think a larger discussion with the community in terms of finding champions and people that are, willing to take on public art displays or the little projects that we're talking about in terms of having salons and things like that. So having that kind of a discussion in terms of maybe breaking it down, this was a huge presentation and there's parts of it that we could, dig into a bit more. But if we're going to be both a place where we can have this discussion and public notification of all the potential.
Yeah.
And the things that you would like to prioritize and that, you know, there's potential in terms of us helping and getting more people involved. I want to bring it down a little bit from the very high level.
Yeah.
And, you know, whether it's, I wasn't able to get to your AGM, so I don't know all the details in terms of your financial statements, but I think that would help. And, you know, I think in terms of all the difficulties, not the difficulties, but all the details that we're going through with the joint management committee.
Yeah.
It's, we need to figure out a way, I think, of this renewal of the relationship so that we're not having to I don't know whether it's a team building exercise or what we have to go through so that it's not any kind of you know, I can't put a label on it, I can't put a word to attach in terms of reducing the kinds of issues and struggles.
Okay.
Right? So that it's so, you know, and it's the whole thing, like the Hearth Presents is probably the best example. This theater has the potential of bringing in and accommodating some very, very high level performers and international, national, you know, provincial. At the same time, this is a community that has put in an enormous effort in terms of making sure that this place, this incredible black box gets built. So how do we balance the needs of the Hearth in terms of that program, the Hearth Presents, and, you know, this, I'm very pleased to hear that you've got an extensive Excel spreadsheet of all the potential stakeholders, right? And how do we make sure that we've got a balance between bringing in all the outside people and making sure that we're supporting all the local people, right? So that's been a discussion that the theater groups have been having.
Yep.
With Hearth. On many occasions.
Yep.
And there's still, you know, bits and pieces, and there's it's not even competition, it's just sort of having independent things that aren't joined up well enough yet. So you know, whether that's the BIM website, that's what's happening in the theater, or the Hearts website, what's happening in the theater, or whether or not we're gonna have a different website of what's happening in the theater and how that gets worked out, so that there's ultimately, I would like to see it so that the BIM council has some serious questions, but we're your biggest booster.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
Right? So that, because it is a community that has, you know, a huge percentage of the population that's involved in arts, directly or indirectly.
Yeah.
Making a living and participating, a fabulous audience, and it's trying to figure out a way of making sure that people appreciate that this is a significant part of our economy, and it's part of what makes us really healthy compared to many places. So we can be boosters on a lot of stuff, but we have to really understand it.
Yeah, and I think, so maybe the budgetary questions seem to have come up a few times now, and kind of the state of our financial setup right now. So maybe that could, if we do want to do, if there is, you know, an agreement to meet again, that could be like maybe the subject that we tackle, so that you understand kind of what are our approaches to going after grants. What is the state of our financial statements?
We're gonna have opportunities.
Pardon me?
Core funding's coming up, and the money for the program. So, you know, we've got plenty of future opportunities to
Right.
talk about money.
We do have a summary as well that outlines the detail that you're talking about. We just didn't include it in the slide because I didn't have the space to fit all of the detail, but I can forward that to you.
Yeah.
So right away, I can send that to you.
Yeah.
We did collect it. And then in terms of the cultural master plan, would be really helpful to sit down with you, Judy, over coffee or something, and then I could walk you through how we position what we could do and what we couldn't do. And it'd be really helpful to hear from you because you were there at the beginning. We're coming in at the end of it thinking, how do we think about this and how do we review it, how do we reinvigorate it? So it would be really helpful to have that discussion. I would appreciate it very much.
And I would like it, I would like it also to be together though, all of us to be doing this
Yeah, for
together,
sure.
you know? Like I've had coffee with some people and that's great, and it's great to form relationships. I think that's super important. However, I just feel like being in person and being together as a group is invaluable, and your work, in particular, you talked about, how do we kind of build on this relationship and any ruptures that there has been potentially, how do we mend those? And Sharon has incredible amount of experience and work doing that with groups, and so that's something that like I think we could rely on you for to help facilitate a process that helps and any sort of relationship issues that may have happened in the past few years. Yeah.
Some comments and questions from the chair, and just building on that is, I would offer that, I don't know if there's mending that needs to occur. I think the relationship is there and it runs deep through participation in our advisory committees, whether it was the select steering committee that got this building built, or the joint management committee that's ongoing, and the deep nature of participation of the arts community on Bowen Island in general. I think so I think that relationship is there, and it doesn't necessarily, in my view, need to be mended. I think there's the opportunity for that relationship to evolve and become more conscious in how we're approaching each other and doing business, and just, I think even this as a new board coming in front of a relatively new council this term, feels like a first step, right? And the formality of that feels like it was mentioned, and it has a bit of that, like the texture in the room right now feels a bit of like that uncomfortable first date. A little bit, right?
Yeah,
It doesn't, it feels a bit formal, it doesn't feel cozy, it doesn't, feels like we're still figuring out how to communicate with each other, and the way that I take that is like, oh, okay, well, then this is a relationship that needs to deepen with these people around the table would be some of my first comments. I think it's also worth framing, so as we look at moving forward, putting a frame around what are the next steps in this conversation. What does that mean in terms of the existing governance when we look at the cultural master plan bylaw and the cultural master plan in general, and then where do we go in terms of the relationship, both from a governance level, from a financial level, as well as an operational level, as I know that we're talking about shared positions coming in and those look like. In terms of the climate that the municipality finds itself in, I don't think there's many community organizations out there that would say that they are flush with cash and have all of the grant money and resources that they need, and local governments and small local governments are no different, particularly as creatures of the province. And again, that's been paying attention to the provincial financial considerations lately within government. Our ability to secure grants is also being limited. That said, I think there's the municipality would celebrate its contribution to the arts, both, in terms of dollar grant figure to the Hearth, but as well as the capital investment put in the theater, which range in the millions of dollars, in the in-kind benefits that are provided to the Hearth in terms of, the brick and mortar sort of facility that's that we contribute down there. The library and some of those facilities, et cetera. So what I would offer is that I think where this conversation is great to sort of blue sky, since we have representatives from board and council here, is does the existing relationship fit? And what I mean by that is when we look at the cultural master plan bylaw, I think the way that it was set up is that, the language there is that the municipality recognizes the Arts Council or the Hearth as the leading arts advisory organization in the community, and there was a formal delegation of the
to implement the cultural master plan in that bylaw. Part of what I'm hearing, and then the funding agreement sort of arose from it, right? So when we talk about core funding, I think from my seat, it's important to distinguish that, it's not core funding to keep the lights on, it's core funding to implement the cultural master plan, to design and develop and deploy specific programming, and to collaborate with our existing recreation staff to deliver sort of core programs and services to the community. So in that, I think where the opportunity is that, we're saying, so if the leading arts organization is saying, well, we've got 38 initiatives, 14 of them are out of scope, like 35% of them are out of scope, and we can tease out what that means, whether they're not doable, whether they're too aspirational, whether there's, funding or logistical concerns around them. 11 are complete and sort of 8 are on the way, then to me, it's like, okay, well, this core document that established, that's been delegated to the hearth through bylaws and organization and is guiding vision and guiding strategy, does that serve anymore, right? And I think what flows from there then is the discussion of, okay, well, and this is what I think we would look to the hearth to help define for us, because I think the hearth is closest to the ground. Like, you're closest to your constituents, you're closest to the arts community generally, you're closest to the arts stakeholders on the island in a way that the municipality, which also deals with recreation, water, sewers, property taxes, building permits, just isn't, right? Like, the arts is one slice of our pie where it's your whole cake, right? Multi-layer, complex cake with a variety of stakeholders in it. So I think where we would go next is perhaps as you're having discussions as a new board, as you're laying out some of the strategy, like, is the existing cultural master plan relevant? Is it a document and the structure of a document as it informs the relationship with the municipalities? It's still useful. Would you move to some other thing? Would you prefer specific project-based or program-based funding for things or for initiatives? And what is that, and then on top of that, like, based on, I think there was, one of the lines is, what I think, because you talk a lot about what you're hearing from owners and what you're hearing from the arts community. It's like, okay, well, we need that fed back into, what is it that you need? So if there was a blue sky kind of, how should this relationship exist? How should this relationship be funded? How are we going to carry out our mission given the resources that we have and the financial climate that exists? And given that, the community center with its arts focus here is such a game changer in the community generally, how does that change the relationship? How does that change operations? How does that change the future of what, the relationship between the municipality and the hearth could become? So just, I guess, to sum up, my encouragement would be when we come back, because there's a necessity to define this relationship, but I don't think there's any rush to do it, right? Like, we don't have to do it yesterday, we don't have to do it tomorrow, like, the hearth funding is in place for the next year, at least, and no one's, I think, around this table suggesting that we're gonna yank carpet and, change things drastically. So I think that gives the hearth a lot of breathing room to come back and define, like, okay, well, under the existing bylaw, under the cultural master plan, what's working, what's not working. We want to completely reimagine this. And I would look to the hearth to provide the leadership to come back and say, this is what we'd like to do. This is what we need. And this is, I suggest the path is moving forward.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a big generous offer, and I think one we would definitely take up.
And what do we envision?
I think I just want to, so I would have to do it in such a way that we don't have to have an exhaustive, like, research, big, large scale discussion with a lots of group of people. It'd be nice to have like an internal discussion so that we can, take what we're seeing in the community and bring that forward to you, and then maybe do that after. Would be great. I know just resources are so taxed with time. So, yeah, I think this is an exciting thought and one that we will definitely embrace going forward.
Questions, comments, further discussion?
Also, just a comment that I just want to thank you for coming today, being so open. It's, I feel like you've opened a lot of doors today. Thank you.
Thank you for setting the time aside for us. When we heard that we would have 2 hours with you, it was at the same time daunting as well as exciting for us. And for many of us, we're still getting to know you. We need to have happen here. We're all committed to the arts in ways that are deep and meaningful. But beyond our personal commitment, we see the power of the arts for opening up our sense of civic responsibility and the meaning in our lives. So we are just really grateful to have the opportunity that you set aside for us.
It's been great to just, like you said, review the organization and where we're at. This has been a key driver of that for many of the people on the board and staff. So that's why I view like continuing to build on this relationship and have these kinds of meetings actually just creates a framework and a strategy for us to continually review where we are, and where we are going forward. So it's really important for us. It's been great for us to have this time.
Thank you for coming.
That's good.
I'm just wondering before we wrap this all up, we've got 5 or 6 senior staff here too. I'm wondering if they've got any questions or input. That's not putting them on the spot.
I'm not seeing any hands raised right off the bat. So, and I think just to close on that note, one of the reasons council wanted to have this time and not just do it as a public comment or a 15-minute delegation of a public meeting is there's to speak to the bigger picture. I think everybody in this room, anybody watching, anybody that lives within the borders of the shoreline understands that the culture and the community and what we participate in here on Bowen is utterly unique. And it's special and it's valuable and it's something that anybody that lives here tries to participate in and grow and contribute to. And so when we have conversations about culture within the confines of a municipal process, it can feel a bit dry sometimes, and it gets into details and it gets policy oriented.
Yep.
However, I think it's important to name that broader context of the work that we're trying to understand and frame and do here and advance and fund moving forward intersects with the work that the Hearth is trying to do as it advances and stewards the culture of this community from the past generation and what you're talking about and everything that you're learning and pulling in and how that's going to inform the future. And those conversations are vitally important. They're weaving around here in the island within this conversation, in the development of our official community plan, in the discussions we're having around reconciliation to affordability, to the ability to provide basic access and services to residents. So in that, thank you for the work that you do and thank you for participating and thank you for the level of preparation and care and anxious jitters that I'm sure were present as you came in front of us. So thank you for being here and I look forward to continuing dialogue with the organization. Okay, and with that, we'll move on to 4.1, strategic plan, June progress updates. We'll turn it over to our CEO.
Mr. Mayor, I have first of 2 reports I have today. First one is the update on strategic planning, which council and this update is workshop we had in December. Subsequent iterations and edits landed on something in February that executing this overall progress snapshot. We had 39 total actions identified. Strategic plan update, we completed 4 to date. There's 26 in progress, 9 that we haven't started. Some of the biggest highlight of progress is our entry into this building and operating from it. So that happened. And we've moved along on some of the engagement and governance files. So we joined the ABSC successfully, it accepted us into the fold. And we have done some collaboration with Squamish Nations, especially on the emergency planning side, where we had a series of panel workshops, which have been very successful and built relationships with Squamish Nation. And the work on the OCP has stepped up and moving ahead. Lots of engagement touch points with the community. And just some of the things that we're going to have to recess forward is there was a commitment from BC Hydro to install EV fast charging stations, and after review of the business case, they didn't feel that they wanted to move ahead, but the door is not closed on that, and trying to pursue senior decision makers, and I believe there's maybe something to come on that, although I don't have anything to report at this point. And then additionally, we are having some staff shortages in engineering and public works, most notably the director of engineering and public works is on leave currently, so that has had an impact on advancing some of our strategic priorities. There's a fulsome outline of that in the report. Could share that on the screen now. But I think at this point, I'll just open it up to council to see if they have questions, comments, concerns.
Not seeing any. The only question I would have is under the strong infrastructure next, where it says relevant asset report cards for culverts, water mains and roads. It says not started on, though I believe you've seen some of those.
Yeah, you have seen that in a early draft. I mean, they're not complete because they were kind of a proto beta version of them. And I think we're gonna add more of this this year, and we will be starting the interview process for the manager of infrastructure in the next coming weeks. So once that position is filled, then we should be able to advance more rapidly on some of these aspects.
So just to clarify, they're started, it's just, there's an inventory of them and so forth, but they haven't been ranked as to what needs to be replaced first and second and all that sort of stuff.
No, the asset management report cards is meant to be a snapshot through the chair, but of where our infrastructure is at in terms of their condition. So are they poor, fair, to good or very good? So that's some kind of a price tag. So we did present them, and I believe there's some asset classes that weren't quite finished in time for the budget both this year, so they haven't been included. And these asset report cards are living documents too, so they we did a first cut based on the information we had, but as we get more information on the inventory and condition of our assets, they're going to fluctuate and change, but we want to get the ball rolling on them, and they're still good. So sometimes we don't advance things, but the good be the victim of the perfect. And so in this case, we want to get going with that. So we'll be continuing work on that, and we'll have a more improved version of next budget. Okay.
One follow-up.
Yes, Councilman.
So when you're doing these plans, and I'll just use culverts as an example, how do you evaluate the risk of the culvert failing?
Thank you. Good question through the chair. So the risk would be based on the size of the culvert, location of the culvert. Is it servicing arterial or collector road that's servicing many other areas. It's, you know, a culvert in the middle of Bone Island Trunk Road would be a nice risk, because of that. That's one factor. So what's its criticality? The other is, what's the age and condition of it? So if it's an imminent risk of failure, like it's, you can see the bottom of it is visually corroded, that would also elevate the risk of the culvert. And right now we're going through the exercise of evaluating all our culverts, because there is some grant opportunities out there to access funding to replace some of them. So that is work that's ongoing.
So a follow up to that, if the culvert is for a street or a creek or something like that, is there an evaluation, is part of the risk, what would happen to things downstream if that culvert fails?
Yeah, it should be part of that. Downstream risks, upstream inputs into it. There's whether failure is going to limit access to an isolated part of the island that doesn't have a secondary readout. Those should all be factors considered in part of this categorization.
I'm assuming if a culvert fails, there are all sorts of stuff running into the creek. And therefore, whether there's water systems catchment downstream is part of this factor.
Yes.
I have a vague recollection, and I haven't been able to flag it in the minutes, that there were a couple of things that we were considering adding to our strategic planning. Is there a process that we've got when something comes up in a meeting and it's part of the minutes that it gets added into? Kind of a follow back to this, or something that keep track of it?
Yeah, through the mayor. So, I guess the process would be to identify the item and have a discussion amongst council on where that fits into the strategic plan. I would say that at this point, given our staff shortages in engineering and other areas, if we were to add a new item to the strategic plan, I think there should be consideration given to what things you don't want to advance that are considered priority. So, and that would be the process, is to bring it forward to council and have council deliberate and decide if they want to further fine tune this list, because we do have 39 actions. The other process is to put it into, I guess, the bucket list is the technical terminology we've been using at the municipality, and for consideration when we look at this again next December.
So someone's keeping a bucket list?
Yeah, it would be.
So,
Yes.
is it not something that you
Are there any items in the bucket list?
There are two, yes.
Sure.
So one is the allocation of the MRDT revenue. So whether it be applied 50-50 tourism and or that's it. And a consideration of stronger regulatory tools for management of invasive species. Plant species.
So it's not, the next step is not an update on the report from today, but adding them to strategic discussions, whether or not it does get out.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and those could come up at these quarterly strategic check-ins, however, given the operational constraints right now.
Yeah.
And going to the summer, it's premature to have anything. Okay, not seeing any further questions or comments. Look to council for a motion to receive for information. Submitted by Councilor Getty, seconded by Councilor Morse. Any further discussion? All the question, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that carries unanimously. And the 4.2 council governance check-in, back to our CAO.
Thanks again, Mr. Mayor. So a little bit of nervous excitement on this one. It's our first governance check-in. I ideally, I would report on stuff that was discussed at this meeting and then advance forward to a subsequent governance check-in. Seeing as this is the first iteration of this, I've prepared a report to get the ball rolling with some things I observed. These might be good ideas, but if they're not good ideas, I'm really willing to, I would like to hear council's feedback on them. Bearing in mind that these are some ideas we could try as an organization, and that, you know, this is a living process. If some of these don't lead to no benefit, or they just operationally are proving difficult to provide on a consistent basis, then we can relook at these items and address them in subsequent governance check-ins. So this is the first one, and I'm hoping there's going to be observations from council that can be shared with staff on how things have been going. So with that, it's my introduction to it, and to the discussion going on.
So I had some questions. In terms of using straw polls, I'm curious how staff would have, like, how would that be operational? Is it straw polls within meetings or within other areas?
No, I think we have to have pretty tight policy controls on it and have a written guidelines on when we would use it. I wouldn't want to use this as a frequent tool. I think it should be used sparingly. But there are some instances, and one specific, and the one that comes up often is last minute letters for support from council for a particular organization that's trying to receive a grant funding opportunity. And you know, we're all well attuned to our council process and the timelines through which we operate, but NGOs and the public may not be quite aware of that, so they often will come, you know, wanting a letter of support for something that's a noble cause in the community, and not having the luxury of waiting on our process to get those letters. So this is just a tool that can be used. So it would be administered through email, and we get a yea or nay through email to say, you know, is it okay to issue their support. I do not want or intend to see this process for major decisions or budget decisions. Those should come to council, in my opinion, but sometimes there's a time when a quick decision is made and you can't wait for that 2-week cycle.
I would be, if it's enshrined in the policy, I would definitely be supportive of it, because it's the notion of straw polls has come up before, although they've also bitten us in other cases. So even something that happened that was left over from previous terms, there was a major decision made by email that was never captured in minutes, and then became subject to an FOI and then got out in the community, and neither the current council or new councillors knew about the decision that it had like a very significant community impact. So I'm not averse to it. So whether it's an update, you know, either policy or to procedure bylaw that really spells it out, it could be enshrined about.
Yeah, and to comment further, Mr. Mayor, like I had received the history on that particular incident, so I'm aware of it. I think enshrining it with some clear guardrails that are written down will help this. I think also there should be, as a CEO, it's my job to catch those types of things to make sure that I'm not asking for straw polls on something, a weighty decision. And like I said, I see this as a tool that's to be used sparingly.
Okay.
At the trust, we do a request without meeting. And it's very formal, and there has to be a mover and seconder, and then there's a vote. And that then the results of that get published as part of the minutes. So there is a record And it's typically what we've been using it for most recently is when there's none of a quorum for committee of the meeting. So it's been published as a public meeting, and we need to publish that it's going to be yes, and it's not gonna happen, so do that within 24-hour, 36-hour time limit, but yeah, I think that the formalities, making sure that it becomes public.
Councilor Mercer.
With the resolutions, when we've done a poll and we've all voted, what do we do afterwards? Do we publish the results of that poll as part of the next meeting? Like the one we just did for that letter of support?
If I can answer that, the most recent letter of support that was signed by the CAO, so it. In the past, when we've done straw polls, prior to this council, we would add it on the next regular council meeting agenda as a ratification item, so it would be ratified in this room.
Yeah, and my recollection is the trust having the, that is because everybody is so far flung. And it would be very difficult until Zoom came along to, actually hold a meeting to vote on something. I mean, with Zoom these days, I don't think we should be doing straw polls of any kind. The only thing I can possibly see is when somebody in the community wants a letter of support for a grant and it's time sensitive and they blew the timeline, or they didn't know they had to, 2 weeks in advance. So I would only support those kinds of things. I don't think we should, get involved at all in anything. By the way, straw poll for any kind of decision for discussion. You'll have to remind me later on about what that resolution was you're talking about. Too much of my mind these days.
Was that related to paper address?
Oh, I know what, but I can't remember which particular one. Yeah, so if we're just talking about straw polls first, then I would only do it for nothing, no preliminary consensus building, nothing this, if there's a, is it okay if I send the as CAO the support letter for this organization's grant application? That would be as far as I think it's good.
Other comments? So in terms of the, I believe, let me scroll up here, the council chambers audio and speaker recognition. Very much support this. I hear this frequently in the community about needing some sort of AV system in here. I believe it was in the budget, when we pulled it out of the budget and put it in reserve owing to cost considerations. So I'd be open to seeing that come back with few quotes as to what that would cost from different suppliers.
Yeah, I've heard various scales of costs. I know that in a previous organization I worked, we had
That's me, you're speaking up.
wireless ones, but there's I'm illustrating money. But it is, I think there might be, we'll look for cost-effective solutions, definitely grant opportunities. I know yesterday I was, not yesterday, but the last council meeting, I was listening on my vehicle as I was driving to the interior, and I found it, I was following council proceedings on a matter that we'll discuss today. But I found it difficult to hear the deliberations at a time, just as playing the role of a member of public tuning in on YouTube. So I think part of the reason too is we're waiting to see how this room would function in terms of the audio here. And now that we've been here for a bunch of meetings now, I think we're starting to understand what the limitations are with the system we have in this room. So.
I'd also be curious about giving some thought to whether it's a wireless system or a system that can be moved between this room and the theater.
don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that council will at times be dealing with issues that are of so much interest in the community that there's just no room for the public in here, and a quick change over to the theater where there's more space would be useful as well. So if there's both an audio and visual solution that can be swapped between both rooms for council meetings or can be the whole meetings, I think that would be worthwhile to
We've
explore.
already got a speaker system in the theater, so I would assume, I just assumed we would be able to use them.
Mhm.
And, but I'm assuming since they can show movies or videos, that we could use the same system for putting up a Zoom presentation. Um,
I'm not a technical expert as to the systems and
I just, you know, sorry, but the other thing I want to say is, you know, when we used to have a whole speaker system. Where we all have the speaker that's out in front of us. So I don't know what happened to any of that. It's still sitting around somewhere. It's the basic speaker set. 7 microphones per 8.
Councilor Goody.
So when Sky had the workshop here for all the audiologists that came from various places in Canada, there was some talk in terms of maybe having some equipment that could be used on a trial basis or as part of a research program, something like that. So I think our accessibility continues getting up to speed, and we'll have very much to offer. And once we get that accessibility, I mean, it was information that we got from the first PCM conference we went to in terms of grants around it. Got that accessibility. So it's good to know that that's well along in terms of getting approved as well. But, yeah, it's very, very hard to I think with the heating and the cooling system, that creates white noise that hampers the speakers that we didn't have in the other place. So it's even harder to hear it in this room.
What? Like Councilor Wade.
I forget where I read it in this, but I think if we each had a microphone, wireless, and a light that went on when we're speaking, and the visual part in terms of anybody watching, they'd be able to see that light so they know who was speaking. And it might help the chair just in terms of managing interruptions. If only one mic could operate.
Slap a button.
Just through the chair, a comment on that is the mayor, to his credit, is very good at seeing people and acknowledging them, but we have to keep in mind that not every meeting is chaired by the mayor in this room, and with the committees, we have members of the public who have stepped up to be chairs of committees that do not have a lot of experience in Robert's rules and things like that. So having this tool in place will make it more accessible and maybe make it less daunting for people who otherwise wouldn't step up and be chairs of committees, right?
Can I go back to one of the other items on this action list?
Absolutely.
I guess because I find both the Islands Trust and the Metro Vancouver agendas cumbersome. And what I find cumbersome about them is that the fact that they're 500 pages and they're PDFs. Ours are HTML, so it's really easy to click on the agenda item and go have a quick look at what it's all about. So I don't, I mean, it sounds really nice to give a little summary, but is for the, is it really going to help the public? Is the 2 hours per staff person per meeting worth it? Or, for the fact that, they can load up the HTML and just flip to the document, I just don't know whether it's worth the time. And then when you talk about meeting purpose, the executive summary should, the meeting's purpose, well. Are we gonna have an executive summary at the council meeting and of the council holding a council meeting? At the summary, is that what you're meaning by that? Key decisions or discussions strategic, and I'm looking at the top of page 2. I mean, that's that to me is more than strategic or legislative or time sensitive. Is if it's time sensitive, put it at the beginning of the agenda, not at the end. You know, so people aren't wanting to get out of there and not willing to pay attention to the agenda.
Yes, if I could answer that question, to the chair is, so I guess the purpose of the meeting would be just an overview of what the primary focus is for that meeting. So like the number of bullet points, and what are some of the key things, in that. And then the key agenda items, we have a summary of those, what those would be. I mean, there is tools now through AI for people to be able to take a 500-page agenda and try and distill it down to its key points. I think when I presented this forward, and that's probably how we would initially do the draft, is use AI and then proofread it and make sure it actually made sense and try and put this together. And I've been just, I'll use last regular council as an example, and it speaks to the point on delegations that I raised at this point as well. It's is we spent spent a lot of time on the Grafton Lake water sampling report. There was a lot of discussion had on that, but in my mind, a regular council meeting should be about making decisions. That's where we should be spending most of our time, is on decisions that have budget implications, policy implications. So if there's a tool that could help through a big agenda to focus council on where they should be spending most of their time at the meeting, that might be beneficial. I think also this was done with a recognition that as councillors on Bowen Island, you have a lot of commitments, a lot of work to do. And so this is one way that we could possibly help you do your jobs more efficiently, or flag something that maybe you want to really get into the details on and be prepared for a council meeting. Definitely something that like all these things are suggestions. They're not, this is not something that you want to proceed with. Then we'll move forward with them, but it's a suggestion, and we can also try these things, and if they're not proving to add any benefit, then we could not keep on doing them. So yeah, I hope that helps provide some context around that particular one.
Well, for somebody who likes to read the background information, I could give a broad house, excuse my language, for an executive summary. And I'm concerned that people won't read the background information, and therefore they're not going to have the knowledge base to make an informed decision. An executive summary doesn't necessarily give you all the information you need to make a decision. And I would also be concerned that you were thinking with the executive summary that you won't be providing links or the background information.
Yeah, just for context, because Metro Vancouver is referenced here.
I had to look at their agenda.
So, and I think so Metro Vancouver introduced, they are now publishing 2 different agendas for board and committee members. And one is just a straight up standard agenda with proposed recommendations. And the second one is the same thing, but with the executive summary of the reports attached the agenda item. And my sense of why it was moving in that direction is that the agendas for Metro Vancouver, both from a committee and board standpoint, were becoming incredibly unwieldy. So they were maybe 13 to 1700 page PDF documents on a range of topics, from climate to sewer to regional planning, that you know, for a board member, is, to me at least, feels like
it's not part of your core municipal stuff that you're doing anyways. It's part of the regional district, which sometimes feels secondary to the elected responsibility of the municipality. Personally, I find to Councilor Morris's point, the HTML agendas we have it laid out is really easy to follow. It's because it's not done anywhere else. Like I can just go, I can see the recommendation, I can click into the staff report. If I need more, there's the two summaries in there in the detailed staff report. So and we're also more familiar, I think, as a council with sort of the ongoing stuff that's happening with the new municipality, like in a way that doesn't necessarily happen, I think, at Metro Vancouver, where things feel like they can come more out of left field than you've got a board of 45 people trying to decide what makes sense of it. I think there is, in terms of agendas for council, I know Councilor Getty and Councilor Fast brought up some thoughts and concerns around being able to know, and I'm paraphrasing Councilor Getty here, so if I'm getting you wrong, feel free to jump in, is better knowing the arc of what's coming, and in discussions with Kristen and staff, there was thoughts of making the agenda planning tool more not public facing, but it's council facing, because in that there's because we meet every 2 weeks, the way that it sort of goes is that, so we'll have a council meeting on Monday, and then on Wednesday or Thursday, we're having an agenda planning meeting for the next agenda that gets published on Monday. So in terms of like a lot of the time for a fully set agenda, there's not a lot of but I know that staff is giving some thought to, okay, well, what could the agenda planner look like if it was more accessible to council? I don't know. And Sophie, it's your first day back, whether you want to speak to that at all, or we can just leave that to future governance check-in.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, and it's good that that was brought forward, because that's the kind of information we want coming in, these governance check-ins on processes that could work better for council. So, I guess the concern with the agenda planner is it's a fluid document. It's subject to change. It's subject to facts, and it's really used by staff as a placeholder to plan for their report writing ahead. And I mean, it's usually pretty accurate, but it does change. Stuff does get pushed out further. So, so for us to share it, we have to put a lot of caveats around the content, what's expected to be coming, and you know, sometimes having as my experience has shown, having preliminary draftings and circulation can raise more questions than it answers provides answers to. So that's just my concern. But that being stated, there might be other ways to give council some kind of an idea of what's to coming in. We could potentially have, you know, we do our agenda review with mayor. We could have a portion of that that's open to all councillors to see what's coming ahead. We could have a long cast into the future of what's potentially coming. We're open to ideas, but I think that was just our concern. It's just it's a very fluid document that's subject to change, and really was set up so that we don't have situations where we have everything coming on one agenda and the next week we have nothing. So we try and spread our the content out over 6 weeks. That's our context.
Councilor Whitfield, I can maybe.
So backing up a little bit, I think the executive summary would be a big help. I don't have the same problem with the PDF I'm hearing here. I don't like the HTML, so I download the PDF. And as long as the page numbers are there from Sophie, then I can, in Adobe, in Acrobat Reader, I can go directly to those pages. So it's just as easy to find a specific item.
Each to his own.
Anyway, but I do think the outline would really help. And you know, if, you know, if we're not gonna read our package, we're not gonna read our package. But like, I don't think this is gonna make the difference as to whether or not you follow through. On the agenda planning, I think it would be very helpful to put it out with the caveat that this is subject to change. You know, referring to Councillor Getty's letter in terms of it's the warning that something is coming, and if the change is that it gets dropped off, well, that's not a problem. But if there's something there that you weren't anticipating, and you know, that clearly can cause some challenges. And you know, in that particular case, Mayor Leonard did mention that there was a reference to it in the earlier meeting. But nonetheless, I just don't see the harm in sort of giving us a little bit of a heads up as to what's coming.
I guess if I can speak to the agenda thing first, you know, we knew that something was gonna be happening, and had advance notice that the Arts Council was gonna be giving some sort of presentation, but I could have just completely spaced on it and not connected it in terms, but I wasn't sure that it was a specific date. So when I got this invitation to do this special ceremony, I was concerned about having visitors from New Zealand that were meeting today, and whether or not, you know, they needed to, whatever, all the logistics around that itinerary. So I had figured out that I could leave really early this morning to get to that ceremony and do, you know, this, no offense, but, you know, do the strategic planning and the other thing by Zoom. And if I didn't have good connection and I couldn't hear, then I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't feel badly that I had missed it. You might miss it. I wouldn't necessarily. But the Arts Council was different, and I wanted to very much to be able to hear and participate and stuff like that. So somehow or other, it was late in the process when I connected with this today. And I arranged to and agreed to this ceremony and have been on the guest list and all of this kind of stuff. So I ended up creating for myself a little bit of an embarrassing situation, and I wish that I could have avoided it. So, and it happened once before, I can't remember when, and I think that, you know, with all sorts of caveats, it's subject to change, it's not for the public, it's only internal, you know, and if we need to have any kind of constraints in terms of how we use it, and whether or not, you know, we get involved with staff in terms of what's coming down the pipe or anything like that, I'm prepared to follow any of those kinds of guidelines. I just really appreciate a bit more heads up. So if it's the planning, you know, that we've seen it once before. I can't remember what the process was, but at the very early on, we had that agenda. I know that it exists. I have seen it, and it's like the agenda planner. It's like that's a very helpful tool, and it would be really, I hope, easy as a benefit in terms of just having that outline and having something, you know, like that. I want to make sure that I'm here. I'm not going to book holidays and, you know, going to whatever, arrange my schedule so that I'm part of it. The executive summaries, I'm not sure. We've had a discussion at the trust in terms of whether or not we should be relying on A&I and what the problems are. And I can't remember the details of it, but we decided that we would limit it as much as possible and certainly not any AI input in drafting the bylaws or anything like that. So, and I think that the benefit of us each coming to the meeting with our different spin on how we read things, that I wouldn't want that to be influence, I suppose, in terms of relying just on an executive summary. And I think that it's extra work for you or whoever the staff is, so we have to write it. So what I find difficult is and that Metro agenda that I was reading about, that thing up in Delta in terms of that was 700 pages, and every scrap of paper that was ever attached to it. And that was really obnoxious, and we've somehow or other had a line where we can link into a previous report. And we get like a one line title in terms of, 4 pages of letters from the public, or 17 pages of the architect's report or something like that, so that we can dig into it as we've got time. We have the overview, we can dig in. So I like the way that our agendas are set up. I can look at it very quickly and see how much there is and how much time I have to set aside to make sure I get through the agenda, and I can start in terms of what I think is the most important, or what I'm gonna have time for everything that I don't have to dig in. And I'm not sure that it's, in terms of how I get through the agenda, I just basically start at the top and start to plow it through and make sure that when it first comes out, that I set aside enough time for it. So I think it's a make work project that I'm not sure it would help. So, and I wouldn't want it to have any influence or decrease in terms of our coming to our own decisions, our own ideas.
Trustee Ayo, and then.
Just, thank you through the chair. Just speaking specifically to the executive summary piece. I agree with Councilor Getty, like for our agenda and for the stuff that's in our agenda, I don't, or the, reports from staff, that kind of thing. I don't really see the need for it. It does sound kind of make work. But for the 500-page reports from somebody else, or maybe internal as well, if something's like that, yeah, I'd be happy to see an executive summary for something like that. And then, I mean, the way I read documents is I do an executive summary myself. I get a sense in the first paragraph what they're talking about, and then I'll go look for it. And if you can, if there's going to be an executive summary, then I've already established the questions in my own mind from that, what I want to dig deeper into. And then it's on me to do that at that point. So I see the value in that for big, long things for sure. But for a kind of day-to-day agenda sort of thing, I think it might be make work for you, for your staff. And I think they've got a lot of better, well, for you then, okay. And I do have some real antipathy towards AI to start with, so, full disclosure here, but, yeah. So it's.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that. Hearing here is maybe we don't need executive summaries at this time, and that's fine. I think in terms of the hours, some of these things or the extra time, we did have a vigorous discussion with staff on some of these items. And the thought was that there might be some time into some of these things, but we're hoping the result will be that we'll have more efficient council meetings and save time in another way. If there's, one thing that could greatly benefit staff is getting questions on some of the content ahead of time when it's emailed, so that we're prepared with our information response. And sometimes the questions catch us a little bit flat-footed, I feel. And so a good tactic is to send your questions. I'm going to be asking you about this. It's greatly appreciated by staff when they're about to present something and they receive a question in advance, so they can prepare to answer that question. So there was a component of this where we thought if it's more efficient, it might actually save us times in other areas. But like I said, this would be extra work for me if I'm taking this one. I would summarize it, but not necessarily. Like, we can leave this or not even proceed with it at all.
Is it possible to just try it for 2 months and see what we think? Is that, do you have to put too many processes in place to make that happen? And then
Eventually, but I'm okay with you.
Okay.
I'm too.
I'm okay with that. So,
Council Getty, followed by Council Bruce.
What I just heard in your last comment was that if we've got questions, that we get them to you as early as possible. So that you know how to heads up. You know, that's less work, but if that's something that would be helpful. So,
I do think so. I think, and I'm just, it was fresh in my mind, the example of Rachel presenting for her first time ever at council and, you know, all the nerves that come with that and then being invested. And by the way, I thought she did an excellent job for her first time in council. And I kind of warned you, once you do a good job, once you might be back again. So, but I think for somebody new that's presenting for the first time in council, I really, having those questions up front will at least put them at ease that they're not, you know, they're gonna get surprises, but they're gonna be more prepared when they step into that.
It's a practice I've always followed, sending in if I've got questions, and then these are what I'm gonna be asking. So they do head up. I totally agree with Councilor Getty, I think we should not bother with the executive summary. And when we get big 500 page reports from consultants, they usually always have an executive summary in front of them. So you can look at it and then delve into specific pieces, so I'm quite happy with the way the agendas flow right there. The fact that they're both, people like PDFs, they can use PDFs. If they like HTML, they can use the HTML.
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, you go through this discussion amongst council and if you land on a resolution, it might be something like that council adopt the government's action plan with the exception of these items that can be part of the executive sessions.
Yeah, so for the sake of time, just going down the list and summarizing what I've heard around the table, there doesn't seem to be unanimous support for the agenda-wide executive summaries. And personally, I'd be loath to, given the current staff constraints, is that anything that's going to be an hour or two per council meeting to under our CEO's plate? To the conducting pre-delegation check-ins, we haven't discussed. I would be in favor of this, just pending. So just to let council know, the way sort of delegations occur, they sort of get approved, not approved, informally, generally through a conversation between the corporate officer and myself, or the deputy corporate officer and myself of, oh, this person wants to come and speak. Do we want to have them come and speak back and forth? There's no real set policy for delegations. I don't think we have a set policy for delegations. Do we?
Yeah.
Well, we do. Okay.
Which is right.
Right. So it's in the procedures bylaw. That's sort of how they've been handled. I think the my general frame for delegations has been if it's something of interest that would outstrip a 3-minute public comments section, and if it seems like something that council would also want to have back and forth on, or if it's a community organization coming in to report to us, that's how we've used delegations. The delegation from last meeting was really council needs to hear this. We need to have a fulsome discussion. There's no other place to put it, and that's where it got dropped into the agenda just for the sake of time. But I would fully support a sort of a tightening up of having staff be able to review materials and prepare for council questions on that. I think that's necessary. And I think it gives staff a bit of an ability or the authority to ask the delegation, okay, like, what is it you would like to do? What's your agenda here? We have the materials in advance, and I think it's helpful to have things like slides or reports or things like that in advance of the delegation presenting, so that council's never caught by surprise as to what's happening.
Just on the note for delegations, it's one approach I've seen against at least one of the municipalities on the big delegations. Like the ones where there's going to be a lot of discussion, it's going to take more than 10 minutes of having those delegations presented to committees of the whole. Offers a little bit more time and space for more spirited debate and delving deeper on the details. Because at those committees of the whole, ultimately, the recommendations to council and, I think, regular council is the business end of what this council does. That's where the decisions are made, the direction the staff comes. So that might be another approach is when we meet with these pre-delegation committees. I don't know, and corporate officer can correct me if that's allowable within our current procedures bylaw to have delegations and committee of the whole. But if it is, then maybe on the Grafton Lake presentation, for example, that maybe committee of the whole would be a good setting for that one, where we could ask a lot of questions as a council or organization of the presenters. Yeah.
Straw polls, I would, I'm not hearing unanimous support for either. The upgrading council chambers audio and speaker systems, I might pull this one out only for the reasons that we did put funding into an equipment reserve, and I think there's a general consensus that this would be a good project, and it assume, or I would hope that it just flows through a procurement process naturally to come back to council to reallocate reserve funds. Formalizing staff directions for resolutions, I would support. We need to be clear in our resolutions as much as possible and not directing staff with the exception of resolution. And then standardizing staff reports and presentations. I know that there's been efforts made by the CA on this front already, but formalizing it with council direction would be beneficial. So my recommendation would be that the committee of the whole recommend that council adopt the governance action plan as outlined in this report, with the exception of 1, 3, and 4. Which are the agenda-wide executive summaries, the straw polls, and the audio and speaker systems.
For 4, what's gonna
So because it's an equip, so what I'm sort of loath to do is through a governance check-in, give the notion that we're effectively improving extracurricular budget, something that's already in reserve. Like, I think it's being handled through processes already, and I would take the general, I don't know, for lack of a better word, the vibe of things being that we're supportive of it, but it should just go through a regular procurement process. Yes.
I've got a problem with number 2, because it says here it's estimated staff time is 1 hour per delegation. Well, if somebody's making a 15-minute delegation, you don't need to spend an hour time to do it. So why don't we just develop I think I remember being in the city of District of North Van. They've got a little cheat sheet that they hand out, or a guide for, so a 1-page guide for delegations that, you've got to have your slides prepared so they can go on the agenda. You've got to do this, this, and this, and you've got 15 minutes, which is our normal time for our procedure bylaw for a delegation.
Yes, to scan through the chair, 1 hour is really worst case scenario. I imagine check-ins would take 15 minutes for most of them. The 1 hour extreme example is the Grafton Lake one, because the content was so technical and there was a lot being delivered and a lot of questions technically we had. But other ones are pretty straightforward, and I would say that most of them are going to fall within that 15 minutes. That's all we need, I think. But there's going to be the occasional ones where there might be an executive summary for the report to go through, or some really big engineering type things that would require those. So 1 hour is worst case. I don't think it's going to take 15 minutes, most of that.
Yes, Councilor Gay.
If the upgrade to the audio and speaking systems doesn't fall within the governance very comfortably, can we pull that out separately and make a different recommendation so that it gets onto the agenda, either through budget review, or I don't know how to recommend doing it, but I'd like to see that one move forward, either with a reference to the accessibility committee to reconsider the budget or come up with a plan for us.
Yep, so good, so potential motion could be that the committee of the whole recommend the council adopt the governance action plan as outlined in this report, with the exception of 1 and 3, and refer 4 back to staff.
I think that motion.
Okay, moved by Council Getty, seconded by Council Wade. Any further discussion? Not seeing any on the question, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye, and that carries unanimously. Moving on to adjournments. Moved by Councilor Saunders, seconded by Councilor Getty, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Getting too
Aye. And we will take a